Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special holiday edition of the Steel City Underground Podcast. I am your host, Joe Kuzma. I hope that everyone is enjoying their Labor Day weekend. I know that I most certainly am, as are all of the members here at the team running SteelCityUnderground.com. I know that there hasn't been a podcast since the Steelers' final preseason game, and a lot of the roster and waiver moves, and a lot of that, that's very intentional on our part here. There are a bajillion articles over at SteelCityUnderground.com covering all of the cuts down to the 53-man roster, the 10-man practice squad, the news revolving players such as Ladarius Green, Sanquez Golson, Bud Dupree, and even the big trade with the Cleveland Browns for cornerback Justin Gilbert. We're going to be touching on some of those in a future episode here coming up this week, but we're still waiting for the aftermath and all of the dust to settle from all of these roster moves before we really jump the gun and say something that, we put our foot in our mouth. So today I wanted to bring you a special edition, kind of a bonus holiday edition, because I'm going to be talking to a special guest here who is really plugged in to, well, the local culture. It's a really good cause, and if you find yourself wanting to help out and give a helping hand, plus end up with some nice gear for yourself. Joining me today is the founder of 26shirts.com, Reid. Del, thank you for taking time out of your day to join me on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you hosting me on this.
Yeah, not a problem whatsoever, because, of course, some people aren't familiar with 26 Shirts already. We're going to make them familiar. However, there's been one shirt of yours that's been very popular amongst the Pittsburgh crowd as of most recently. The phrase, "Don't cross the moats." Arthur Moats, of course, coining that, and you guys had the shirt, and I even seen Mike Tomlin was walking around with it at practice just recently. That's got to be very cool for you guys.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was really fun to see that all of a sudden, like Mike Tomlin showing up all over my Twitter timeline and my Instagram. He's wearing the shirt that we printed. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about how you got started, and of course, well, tell me how you got started first, and then I'll ask how you feel about maybe a Pittsburgh Steeler or Steelers head coach wearing your shirts, and of course, all the various areas that you service or are based in. Yeah,
so full disclosure, I'm actually a Buffalo Bills fan. That's how I know Arthur Moats. I'll get into that in a moment, but in 2011, I coined the term Bills Mafia as like a inside joke between myself and 4 or 5 other people. So if anybody's ever heard that term or thought it was silly or dumb or rolled their eyes or thought it was cool, first of all, sorry. Second of all, thanks if you thought it was cool. But anyway, so that whole thing kind of blew up, and I found myself with this social media audience, and I felt a responsibility to do something productive with it. So we started a nonprofit called Buffalo Fan Base, and we do different events in the Western New York area to raise money for different charitable needs and everything, because I always wanted to use my powers for good if I ever got any. So I had some social media, I guess, powers, maybe it's a dumb way to put it, but had some more ideas coming along, and I eventually landed on this concept of selling a different sports t-shirt every 2 weeks to help different families in need. I'm a big fan. I'm a big t-shirt honk, and I always check the daily websites like Ripped and Woot and all that stuff where they have a different shirt every day. So I took that model. Can't really do a daily shirt when you're just focusing on one team, but took that model and kind of blew it out into something where it was every 2 weeks. And that's the really short story of everything.
No, that's actually very good, and I was trying to figure out how you came up with the name 26 Shirts, but it makes sense if it's every 2 weeks, 52 weeks in a year, so that's 26 shirts in a year. Is that how you came up with the name?
Yep.
Oh, man.
Absolutely. It seemed super obvious to me when I started it, and now most people think it's just some random number I picked out, but once you explain it a little bit, they go, oh, so that's cool. We're going to stick with it.
No, that makes an awful lot of sense. And of course, you were saying Arthur Moats, and you were going to talk about that, elaborate that on a minute. For most people who don't remember, Arthur Moats did come by way of the Buffalo Bills to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And of course, we were just speaking off the air a minute ago. You were saying you're welcome for the victory for the Buffalo Bills against the New York Jets last year that landed the Steelers in the playoffs. And of course, I've already said thank you for the victory this year as well. So to get a little bit of early trash talk in, I'm hoping to make my way up to Buffalo. Actually, when the schedule was released and I saw it was in December, I said, oh man, really? So can we have Miami in December and maybe the Bills like in September or October? So tell us a little bit. You said Arthur Moats, or hang or at least have made some acquaintance with Arthur Moats, and this is how the shirt came about, or how exactly does that work?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Arthur Moats actually began his career in Buffalo. A local radio host actually coined the term "Don't cross the moats" after Arthur Moats sacked Brett Favre when the Bills were playing the Vikings in 2010, and basically ended Brett Favre's career starting streak. So I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but Arthur Moats is the reason Brett Favre's starting streak ended. So he quickly became a fan favorite, and anybody who pays even the smallest bit of attention to the Pittsburgh Steelers probably knows that Arthur Moats is one of the most infectious, happy, nice people you'll ever meet. So I through the Bills Mafia, I've had the opportunity to work with a bunch of different players because our Twitter account is so big and we have a little bit of clout and everything. We're able to do promotions, and like I said, we do charitable events and all that jazz. So I just know him through that medium. And when he moved to Pittsburgh, I mean, a lot of Bills fans were pretty upset. But then about a year or so later, I saw an opportunity like, hey, we're expanding our operation into Pittsburgh. Because as I don't know if I mentioned, we actually started in Buffalo. That's where we're based and everything. We're expanding into Pittsburgh to help Pittsburgh families. So maybe Arthur would want to work with us on this. And so I connected with him, and he said, yes, absolutely. That was the first Pittsburgh shirt we ever did. And we brought it back. And then we brought it back again when he recently messaged me and said, hey, I want to buy something for everybody in the locker room. Well, of course, we were like, well, we can absolutely make that happen, Arthur. So, so that's where the whole thing with all the players in the locker room wearing the shirt and Mike Tomlin wearing the shirt, that's where that all came from.
Yeah, I mean, Steelers.com even picked up on that. They have, photo galleries from the practices every day and the training camps and that. And they had a bunch of pictures with Mike Tomlin walking around. He looked like a drill sergeant with it on. It was like a T-shirt over a shirt. And you could tell they were having a lot of fun with it. And, of course, Arthur Moats and other players were taking pictures with the T-shirt or wearing the shirt and group photos. And yeah, it's a very neat and interesting story. Just to go back on what you were saying about Arthur Moats and Brett Favre, I actually have a picture here. I have a little workout area in my basement. It's the only little corner of the basement that gets to be my sports shrine. My wife won't let me put up a bunch of stuff. And of course, I know, being a Bills fan, you're not a regular listener of the show, so you probably aren't aware that my wife is a Cleveland Browns fan. So I live I live in a house divided. So that's the reason as to why I don't have a Pittsburgh Steelers man cave in my basement, but I do have a photo that's up, and it's a photo of something that was auctioned off. I wish I had the real deal, but I happen to just have a buddy that runs they were running a similar event for a local high school football program to get them helmets and stuff like that. And they had a signed picture of James Harrison and LaMarr Woodley from probably about that same year or era, because I think Favre was only with the Vikings a year or two as their quarterback, and they're basically laying on top of him. They look like almost like two dogs with their front paws forward, sitting on top of him, and he's like laying on his stomach with his face in the ground, and it's like autographed. I have just a picture of it, but it was so cool that I actually put it in one of my frames to put it up here in my little my little corner of the house that I'm allowed to put my Steelers stuff up. So yes, absolutely, the whole Brett Favre thing. It drives me crazy that his name still comes up, and I had to tolerate it's not that he isn't deserving of being a Hall of Famer. It just seems like everybody, whenever there's a problem with a quarterback, like the Minnesota Vikings, Teddy Bridgewater goes down, and there's two names that pop up already. Oh, are we gonna bring back Tim Tebow, or are we gonna bring Brett Favre out of retirement? And it's like, come on, man. I mean, we can that ship has sailed. It's gone. But you talked about starting in Buffalo. You are a Bills fan, and it's very interesting how you expanded into Pittsburgh, but you're also involved in several other areas. You care to share some information about those areas with us?
Yeah, we also have a Chicago line of T-shirts and a Cincinnati line of T-shirts. Sorry, but notice there's no other AFC East opponents in that repertoire. But I don't need to really have too many conflicting emotions. But to the Steelers fans, I apologize for selling Bengal stuff. But there's people in Cincinnati that need help too. So
yeah, we can understand. I'm sure we could sympathize with that. So every 2 weeks, you have a new Buffalo shirt, you have a new Chicago shirt, and you have a Cincinnati shirt, and you have a Pittsburgh shirt, and then you have, I'm also looking at the website here, and you have a comeback shirt and a special edition shirt. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the comeback, which is actually the Arthur Moats shirt that we're doing right now in Pittsburgh, because all the shirts we sell are limited editions. That's the whole idea, is that what makes these shirts special. First of all, I'll give it a plug, that we use the highest quality shirts you can buy. So I always tell people, I guarantee when the shirt arrives, it's going to be your favorite shirt, not because you fell in love with the design when you saw it on social media, but because when you put it on, it was the softest shirt you own. So that's one thing that makes them special. Another thing that makes them special is, like I said, they're all limited runs. We only sell it for 2 weeks. Occasionally now we'll do a comeback where we bring back an older design for a shorter period of time. So that's what we did with Arthur. We hadn't planned on it because we just brought that shirt back in June. But when when the entire locker room is wearing this shirt and everybody's saying, "Where can I get this shirt?" You connect the dots. It's like, all right, we're gonna sell the shirt again. So we're happy to do it. We're helping the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Pittsburgh. So that's the whole comeback thing. Now and then we bring things back, and then the special edition is and the one that's on the website right now. It's actually the last day. Is the Buffalo Chicken Wing Festival is this weekend. It's every Labor Day weekend here in Buffalo, and so we did a parody of the popular Netflix show Stranger Things, and it says chicken wings. So we'll do. Sometimes we just have too many ideas or too many concepts, or maybe something that doesn't quite fit into our typical sports mold, and we need an outlet. So we'll do special editions now and then.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't make the connection with the Stranger Things. I'm a big Netflix guy, but it's like I've been so busy as of late. I have yet to check this Stranger Things out, and everybody just keeps telling me about it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been into everything else that's ever been on there with House of Cards or Orange is the New Black, and of course the other things that trend like Walking Dead or Game of Thrones. So I'm seeing everything that's coming out with this theme. I think I've even seen like football videos from various teams where they've incorporated that. Of course, a lot of people are incorporating the football is coming with the winter is coming from Game of Thrones. It's very cool to see those type of pop culture things. And every 2 weeks, you guys are releasing something that's of that nature. Very cool. I see right now on the website, of course, you are very big on the charity deal. It's $8 from every shirt that you purchase at 26shirts.com is donated to a family in need, donated to a charity, and these guys have raised nearly $300,000 to date, which is very impressive, and you deserve a pat on the back and a high five. Like, just slap one, slap the other. That's very cool. So there's always a Pittsburgh-themed shirt, so this is how you end up on a Pittsburgh Steelers-oriented podcast despite being a Bills fan. You already talked about the Bills Mafia. That's kind of how you got started. You got into the charity work. How exactly I see how you ended up in Pittsburgh, but how do you end up in Chicago and Cincinnati necessarily? Because I don't know. I'm not feeling the connection here. I mean, Chicago's kind of out there, and Cincinnati's just like an outlier. You would think maybe New York or, a larger city of that nature. What was the decision process with those two cities?
Sure. So in Chicago, that was actually the first city we expanded into from Buffalo. And it's the third largest city in the United States, right? So there's a lot of people there that probably want to buy T-shirts. probably a lot of people that need help. And my business partner in 26shirts is a closet Blackhawks fan. He loves the Sabres, the Buffalo Sabres, first and foremost, but he does have a soft spot somewhere in that chest for the Blackhawks.
You have just outed him. So you better
yeah, right.
So don't share this with him. Block when you share on social media, because he was going to listen about halfway through and say, you know what, that Dell, I'm going to get him for saying that.
Yeah, right. So, but anyways, so yeah, it seemed like a good fit. He was very familiar with what was going on a regular basis with the Blackhawks and stuff. And, Chicago was a cool city. So I'm like, all right, fine. I just want to go somewhere. I just want to expand somewhere. So the fact that the city had 5 teams was really big. That was the natural progression of thoughts there. And then Pittsburgh was our third city that we brought on board. And, the reason we did Pittsburgh is because it's a relatively short drive from Buffalo if we ever needed to do anything, promotional wise. And we felt that being, the whole Rust Belt thing, there's a lot of things that Buffalo and Pittsburgh have in common. So we wanted to do that. We know, I should say, and goes for Chicago, but especially for Pittsburgh. I mean, if you want to talk about similarities, like Pittsburgh fans are very much like Buffalo fans, and that like they just live and die by their teams. So we knew that there was definitely going to be people that were hungry for gear, and like I said before, definitely people that need help. So that's where we went with Pittsburgh. Cincinnati, it's kind of funny because every time somebody, nothing against the city, but anytime and we're in Cincinnati, people always say Cincinnati. People probably say Buffalo half the time. Buffalo comes up in conversation, but because like you said, it is kind of an outlier in the national consciousness, and only having 2 real sports teams, 2 professional whatever sports teams. We have somebody in Cincinnati who's actually a Buffalo expat who has spent the past 20 years living in northern Kentucky, right over the river from Cincinnati, and wanted to give to her new community. I mean, she's familiar with us because once you're a Bills fan, you're a Bills fan, period. And I'm sure it's the same with Steelers and everything else.
Absolutely.
So that's how she discovered us, was through social media. But she really wanted to give to her new home. And so Allie hounded us for over a year. You got to do Cincinnati shirts. You got to do Cincinnati shirts. So we had a bunch of phone conversations, and actually have family in Cincinnati too. So that, played a small part in the decision, but we're like, okay, fine. We'll do Cincinnati shirts. Just fine. And it's worked out great. She is amazing to work with. She does all of the legwork for us in Cincinnati in terms of finding the beneficiaries and finding, new artists. And that's one thing I should mention is we do Pittsburgh shirts, we do Chicago shirts and all that. We try to use artists in those areas. We want to be, as much as possible, have those shirts be about that city, whether it's, what it says or how it was put together, how it was designed. So she does a great job with that. And if you're listening, if you're in Pittsburgh and you know of people who need assistance, or of artists who would love to, share their talents with us as we try to do good in that community, please get a hold of me.
Yeah, you know what? That sounds tremendous, because there is definitely a personal feel, and there's a personal. I want to say, just eyeballing this, you could tell that these are dedicated to those specific areas. Even seeing some of the shirts that I've seen on social media in the past that you guys have put out, they do. They totally capture the essence of those areas, those regions for those sports teams, and regardless whether or not they have 1, 2, 3 professional teams, which I was going to touch on here in a second, but I just wanted to address the Cincinnati thing. I'm sorry you have family in Cincinnati, but I mentioned on a previous show, and this joke's going to get burned out, but you had mentioned Northern Kentucky. Most people don't realize that, like, Cincinnati, that metro area, really does go into Northern Kentucky. And being an Ohio guy myself, I actually live less than an hour from Pittsburgh, which would be the reason why I've always talked on the show about the Cleveland and Pittsburgh dynamic. I live in Youngstown, actually. So we are split 50-50 Browns Steelers fans, but you speak to either side, whether it's Cleveland or Pittsburgh fans, we don't want to acknowledge Cincinnati. It's kind of like for us, that's Northern Kentucky. And then I realized there's Kentucky Steelers fans, and they were getting upset that we were calling Cincinnati part of their state. See, at least I get one laugh out of it from you, because I know you could definitely sympathize with that, having family there. So, yeah, but these shirts are great. The local designers, is something that's very cool. And of course, for anyone that's looking at the Pittsburgh shirts, there's a Twitter feed for each one of these specific shirts, and the one for the Pittsburgh shirts is, I'm pulling it up here, at 26shirts PIT, just kind of like the airport, 26shirts Pit. So you could follow and always see, and you just see what you see as far as Pittsburgh stuff. And there's a lot of media attention on this with the Ronald McDonald Charities and Arthur Moats. But you're not just doing football. You guys also tend to cover just general, we like to say on this show, Yinzer type culture. You also cover as well the Bucks and the Pens. So there's a large variety of shirts that are available, and they rotate out every 2 weeks. And, of course, $8 from every one of those purchases donated to a charity or family in need. Del, this is a very, very cool concept. I don't know that I could praise it enough more, all the good that you guys are at least trying to do. And seeing as you've raised almost, you're over six figures, and you've raised $300,000 to date. Is there anything, we've talked a lot about the Moats shirt, and because it's the most recent Pittsburgh one, but is there a favorite shirt that you guys have designed, or one that sticks out in your memory as being maybe the most successful when it comes to your fundraising efforts?
In Pittsburgh or Buffalo? Because I guess I have two answers.
Well, you know what? Let's go with both of them. There's
right.
No harm in that.
So in Buffalo, when they signed Rex Ryan to be the head coach after Doug Marrone, let's not even get into that. When they signed Rex Ryan to be the head coach, we sold a shirt called Buffalosaurus Rex, which was basically the Bills logo, but we swapped out the buffalo with a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And we ended up raising over $17,000 for a little girl who had leukemia. Thankfully she's on the mend. But during that time, her parents had to obviously take time off of work and stuff like that. And so I'm not familiar with their finances. I don't get into too much detail with the families. If somebody says they have a need, I do my best to make sure that it's legit, but I don't get into details. But we probably paid their mortgage for a year, if they're the average Western New York family. So that was really gratifying to be able to do that and help that family. In Pittsburgh, back in February, we actually teamed up with the Mario Lemieux Foundation, and we sold a shirt that said Le Magnifique, and it had a profile of Mario Lemieux from the back, holding up his hands and everything, and it said Lemieux 66, and that's by far been our best-selling Pittsburgh shirt. Like, it sold about 5 times as many as any other shirt to date in Pittsburgh. So that was cool. We actually went down to Pittsburgh for the day, or overnight rather, and went to a Pens game. And I kept telling our creative director who came with us to stop groaning every time the Penguins scored a goal, because we're here. I was like, knock it off. No, but it was really cool to be able to help. And that's why we're here, right? Because we're all fans of different teams, but we're all humans, and we're all in this together, right? Trying to help each other out.
Yeah, and especially when you're hitting the sports and the individual culture, it's great that you're purchasing something where you're going to see it help and benefit people in your own community. So that's something that's very cool. So not only let's say you're getting an Arthur Moats or a Mario Lemieux t-shirt, and not only are you wearing something that is unique, a limited time run, but you are also helping people in the Pittsburgh area. If you're fans in the other areas, you're going to help those areas too. I'm sure you guys probably take donations as well when it comes to your work or any other type of help. Should someone approach you, what would be the best way that they could contact you?
Yeah, well, you can hit me up, like you said, at 26shirts IT. My personal email is my personal Twitter is @DelReid, DELREID. Or you can shoot me an email, del@26shirts.com.
Okay, and that's the best way to reach Dell. And of course, the website is 26shirts.com. If you're interested in shirts, and not just only shirts, these guys are also doing sweatshirts you could get for a little bit of an additional charge. And these are available in all shapes, sizes, and varieties. I see they're not only tailored for men, but you could get ladies' t-shirts or even something for the little one if you would like as well. So, Dell, thank you once again for taking time out of your day. What an awesome story. The best of luck to you on any and all of your future work. And again, if anyone is interested in purchasing a shirt, it's 26shirts.com. If you're interested in helping out, that's the same place that you want to head on over to. And of course, if you're a local designer in any of these various regions where they're designing the t-shirts for, it's a great way to get your work noticed as well. So make sure you look Dell up and give them a holler.
Awesome. Dude, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And go Bills.
Maybe I will edit that portion out at the end of this show, but you are most certainly welcome, sir. And once again, thank you for your time. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I would like to thank Dell for taking time out of his day to join the show. If you're looking to help a good cause, this is truly one of them. Jump aboard. Find yourself going to 26shirts.com. Buy a t-shirt. You're going to help people locally in the Pittsburgh area. And once again, we just happen to be talking a lot about Arthur Moats. He's going to be stepping up into a big role with Bud Dupree down at least 6 weeks, entering the injured reserve list. More than likely, he will be one of the players. Well, we're going to have to see what else happens. There's a lot of roster moves, but if Bud's ready, he can be the exception, the designation, or as it was called, the player that can come off the injured reserve. Of course, they don't have to make that decision now. They can make that decision later. And the whole reason for that is what happens if Bud ends up not being healthy. And by the previous rules, they would have had to designate him early. They would have been screwed. They couldn't take anyone else. Should somebody else end up on the IR, they couldn't take them off the list. So that's why they now put the cart properly behind the horse instead of in front of it. But I've already said enough, ladies and gentlemen. You enjoy your Labor Day weekend. If you're catching this after Labor Day weekend, I hope you enjoyed the show. And once again, check out 26shirts.com. Until next time, be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.